Welcome to the Hunt Lore Podcast. My name is David Hepner. Today's guest is Brett Unrau from Flin Flon, Manitoba. We discuss all things hunting with a little bit of fishing. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode. He has a lot of good stories, and just getting into hunting, those stories are always awesome to listen to because it just brings you back to when you started as well. Very relatable stuff. Hope you guys enjoy. My name is David Hepner, and this is the Hunt Lore Podcast, where we will spark our imaginations and pay tribute to the time-honored tradition of hunting by sharing our stories of the hunt. Hunt Lore is brought to you by Black Bear Wear, bear hunting apparel for bear hunters and everyone else. Get it, wear it, share it. Yeah, have you done any of this stuff?
No, like I said, no. And it'd be kind of an interesting thing because I teach English. It'd be an interesting concept to get into a little bit, like for kids, just an alternate platform or way of, communicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did an episode with Aaron Weeb one time, like on his YouTube thing.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it was kind of funny. We hadn't met before. It was the first time we'd met, kind of like you and me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't good on camera. Ultimately, I think that's what it was. And also, we didn't really catch fish.
It's tough then.
It's tough. And yeah, Aaron's an interesting guy. And I think what makes him is that he doesn't want to do what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? He, like, the Linders have how many jigging wrap videos, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to do something different. And so I was like, he's like, what's biting right now? I was like, well, what do you want to catch? He's like, I want to catch pike. Well, like, they're in the weeds right now. I just came from Cedar Lake. We're catching weeds. We need something different. I'm like, well, that's what's happening right now, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, and then he's like, well, what about pike on rocks? I'm like, yeah, I got a couple spots we could do that. And we tried it, and we tried to make it work. And we had 3 days of hard fishing, and we caught a few. And then I think it was that and my awkwardness on camera and just whatever. And then by the third day, he was like, all of a sudden I did something. He's like, that was really good. Why couldn't you be like this the whole time? It's just funny. So yeah, it was interesting. Awesome. So that was, my little experience with there. And
so how did you guys, he just messaged you out of the blue?
I recognized the spot he was fishing on one of his videos, and I just I messaged it to him, and I was like, hey, it looks like you're fishing, yada, yada, yada. And then we just started talking fishing,
Yeah.
And then, we'll just text every now and then, or I'll fire him a text and he'll reply 6 months later, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way he is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Have you fished Clearwater at all?
Yeah. Yeah, I try not to. We just call Clearwater the South Lake Winnipeg Basin of the North.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just hammered by people. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, I'm addicted to Athapap. Like, I'm
nice.
And so it's a really unique, cool fishery, and I just am absolutely addicted to it. And it's a hard fishery. It's harder than Clearwater. Mm-hmm. We have way more bait than Clearwater does. Clearwater pumps out more big fish, but that's interesting. Is that just because more people fish it, or I think there's something to it. Like, they have a better class average, and it's like that in certain lakes. Like, Little Athapap has a bigger size average than Big Athapap does, but Big Athapap has more big fish. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my addiction. So I just, and when I first moved north, I was like, I'm going to fish everywhere. I'm going to fish Reed. I'm going to fish, Wakasko. I'm going to fish Athapap. I'm going to fish Clearwater. I'm going to fish all these lakes. And it's hard to drive past good water to go fish other water. You know what I mean? And so I've got it right there. Why would I go somewhere else? You know what I mean? So I've just kind of keyed in on Athapap, and I've just made it my spot. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that's awesome. We've been recording this whole time.
Yeah, I figured.
So that's perfect.
Yeah, I figured. Sorry.
I learned that. No, that's good. That's awesome. Well, my guest here on the Hunt Lore Podcast is Brett Unrau. Welcome here, Brett.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sounds like you're a hardcore fisherman.
I've become a hardcore fisherman. I've always been into fishing and hunting. Like, as far as I can remember, I've been like just addicted to it. And, but where I live and just opportunities that I have, it's just been my thing. And that's I think that's how people know me for the most part, is I'm definitely into fishing pretty seriously. But I'm really addicted to hunting, and the opportunities that we have up north are actually pretty limited for hunting, if you believe it. When I moved north, I hunt less now. And a little bit that's my job too. Like, I'm a teacher. And so I get great holidays. I just don't get to pick them. You know what I mean? So like I get 4 personal days a year. One of those I have to pay for. And so I just, in hunting season, sometimes I take all 4, but then I don't have them for hockey trips or ski trips or anything else we want to do as a family, you know? And so, you know, I just, if I burn them all in November, you know, then that's that. So, so some years I will, if I really want to do something. Like I've been sitting on a priority 1 draw for 8 years. It's ridiculous. I know. People are like, are you serious? Everyone gives me that look like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I just got to decide where I want to go. And now that I think mooses draw across the province now,
Pretty close.
I think even in some of our northern areas. So now that's probably what I'll end up burning it on, because that's a little more close. But moose hunting's a whole gamut of things, like a whole topic of conversations that we could have for a long time. You know, like it's a sad. I honestly think we're in a sad state in Manitoba for moose hunting across the board, especially up north. Like our moose population is very, very minimal. You know, like I have a friend who's a very good moose hunter. That's who I go whitetail hunting with. And he's guided everywhere. That's the guy you should have on your podcast. He's guided in 5 provinces.
What's his name?
Him and his wife.
What's his name?
His name is Ryan Plett. And his wife, Laura Plett. They've both guided Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories, and Yukon, and Nunavut.
Nice.
Yeah. And they're super hardcore people. I don't know if you could ever get him to sit down to podcast. He's a very low profile kind of guy. Like they live up in the middle of the bush.
Oh, sweet.
You know what I mean?
You know what? My equipment is very portable. So Ryan Plett, I'm coming for you.
He wouldn't let you on his property. I guarantee you. He's hilarious about his space and his property.
We'll meet on a gravel road somewhere. Two dudes sitting in a truck recording a podcast.
He's a funny guy. But yeah, anyway, he's guided in the Yukon. He's guided everywhere. And he just talks about Northern Manitoba moose hunting like you're hunting ghosts, man. You literally just keep calling setting your traps for 5 days. He calls it setting his traps. And he's like, and your guests, like he guides, and your guests are just like, look at you like, are you crazy? Like, you're doing this again and we haven't seen him. He's like, just wait. And usually, eventually, they're going to come, you know, but it's, if you're not in a good area, it makes it even harder. You know what I mean? And so Flin Flon isn't that great of an area, you know, like where I live. It's not that great of a moose area. There's some local guys that really get them. But just with my limited time as a teacher, and then it's hard to get back in there. You know, if I only got 3 days, it's hard to, you know, you're going to spend half a day or a day to get in your spot, and then you're not going to shoot one on the last morning, because then what are you going to do? You know, if you got to be back to work the next day and whatever. So I've just keyed in on bear hunting for a whole bunch of reasons. And that's been our opportunity. And I think that's how you and I connected, was just kind of through bear hunting, you know, and your content and just, I think, our mutual connection with that. So, yeah.
And you have in the last name, Unrau.
Yeah.
So
there's a connection there.
There.
Yeah, we could probably play the game, play the Mennonite game.
Yeah, we were already doing that a bit earlier with Donna there. So that's great. So people that, you know, that's a good introduction. But so for people who don't know Manitoba, where is Flin Flon in relation to Winnipeg?
It's northwest. It's northwest. It's an 8-hour drive. I always tell people it's an 8-hour drive. If you're hustling, maybe you could do a little faster, but that's just what I tell people.
But you're deep in the woods. There's not much ag around there.
No, there's no agriculture. If you get up to the Paw, there's some agriculture in the Paw, which is 6 hours north. But it's really funny. As soon as you head north of Winnipeg, you lose the ag real quick. I mean, you get into the Inner Lake area and there's not really a lot of ag. And then it's just bush. If you go up the west side of the province, you know, if you go from Brandon and north, you go straight north of Brandon, another 8 hours to Flin Flon. You know, you got ag till about Swan River, but then you hit the bush, you know, and whenever we drive south, my kids are always like, oh, there's the first field, you know, the first one to see a field, the first one to see a cow or a bale or something like that, you know, because where we are, it's just trees. And then it changes again. Like you hit the parkland, and then you hit the, I guess you call it the Manitoba lowlands, I think it's technically called, but it's boreal-ish, but it's not a lot of rock until you hit Cranberry Portage. And then Cranberry Portage, the topography changes, and then you get the rock, you get the lakes, you know, and you get the black spruce, heavy black spruce. And
so you get a bunch of ridges then with the rocks.
Yeah, you do. We're not quite into esker land necessarily. Maybe there's the odd one, but not really yet. But yeah, pretty big ridges, you know, and you really see that when you're looking on the water and you see like all of a sudden you're in 180 feet of water, and then boom, it comes up to 40 feet, and you're like, and then it goes back down to 100, 200 feet of water, and you're like, oh man, that's what's happening on shore too. But you can't see it as well because there's so many spruce trees, right? So it hides that, it levels that out. But if you took the spruce trees away, you'd be amazed at the topography. Or if you ever go for a hike, you know.
That's something that I learned just, well, I knew about this. Like you look at when you're fishing, you look at the lake shore, right? And if it's sloping lake shore, it's usually sloping underneath. Yeah. And then if there's a cliff, it's probably deep right there.
Usually.
Yeah, exactly. Usually, not always.
But yeah.
But I'm not a big fisherman. Like I've fished. I like it. It's like number 2 to hunting for me. But it really hit home this past, a couple of weeks ago when we were camping, and I had my little inflatable out on the lake and just using a fish finder, mostly for depth, right?
Yeah.
And then you would see it. You drive by a cliff.
Yeah.
And it's like steep there.
Yeah.
It's like, or deep. It's like, wow, this is,
that's
these
what
guys
it's
are
doing.
onto something.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Doing. Yeah. Yeah. So how far north have you been?
North of Churchill.
Oh, wow.
Guiding bears.
Yeah,
for ganglers.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So
on the
if you
North Seal?
Yeah, North Seal.
Okay.
If you look at Churchill, I would be central, so west of Churchill and just a bit north.
Yeah.
Like not much north. But it was like way up there. The bears are they're mini grizzlies up there.
Yeah.
For the most part, the black bears. And I'm sure maybe that's the same way in Flin Flon. Unless they're closer to people, they might.
Like when you say mini grizzlies, as far as the way they act?
Yes, temperament.
Oh, yeah. No, I've heard that. I've had, like, I used to guide bear hunting going through university, and I worked for an outfitter in the area, in the Flin Flon area, just into Saskatchewan, near Sandy Bay, Saskatchewan. And I did that for, 6 or 7 years. And yeah, I've had guests that have come and have hunted ganglers and other places in the far north, and they always talk about the aggressiveness of the bears up there, and I think it's more sparsely treed and things like that. And I think all that plays into it, but then less human interaction. And so they act differently.
I only guided for ganglers 1 week there, but I had 5 hunters and they all shot, it was 5 hunters. They all shot bears.
Nice.
And we had a bear halfway in the boat. Okay. So that was different.
Yeah.
Just driving up and
checking you out.
And then he came right in there.
Yep.
And the hunter actually wounded that one. It was so close. It was a decent bear, and I couldn't find it. It looked high, like when he shot with a crossbow.
Yeah.
But it's when you're shooting something so close, it just fills up your whole scope. So you got to be concerned about that, I guess. And then we had another guy from South Dakota, an older farmer. I've been trying to get this footage for years. I actually talked to him a little while ago about it.
Yeah.
And he moved, so he's just trying to find everything. But anyways, this bear, we went up to the bait there, and the barrel was like a 30-gallon barrel instead of a 50. And I knew that. He's like, that looks like a pretty good bear. I'm like, well, these barrels are smaller. And, I'm still a relatively new guide, 2-3 years into it. Well, I was probably, my 3rd season guiding bear hunters. So I've seen a little bit, but not real experienced. He's like, well, I want to shoot a bear. I haven't shot a bear in a couple of years. I'm like, okay. And he shot 2 bears. And I asked, okay, those 2 bears that you've shot, he's rifle hunting, have they dropped right there? And the reason I asked that, because we stalked, basically walked up. The bear knew we were there to like 8 yards, and the bear just, all its hair went on end, and it just kind of backed up. You know how when they chase off another bear? And I saw that. I'm like, okay, let's back up. So we back up to 12 yards. Bear's okay. It's pretty comical. And I guess if I was more experienced, I would have talked the guy out of shooting this bear, but it was the second last day, and he wanted to shoot a bear.
All those things add up.
It does.
Yeah.
So then he's like, yeah, I've dropped the bears right on the spot. I'm like, okay, because pretty sure this bear is going to run at us if you don't get it. He gave me his video camera, so I'm videoing, still relatively new to that as well. He shoots, makes a bad shot. The bear's coming right for us. And this is why I want to see the footage, because, well, there's not much to see because the camera pointed straight down as I was backpedaling. He had the gun. He shot a couple times. It veered off, and it was a rodeo. Yeah. He got the bear, but it wasn't a big bear. Yeah. And so it's often the way with guiding is it can be, it's just hard to get coach clients. And if you're not sitting with them or whatever, and if they haven't shot bears before, it's that whole thing. It is. Because they often, and so what? So someone shoots a small bear, but usually when they come to a camp, they're coming to get a quality bear. That's why they're paying for a bear hunt, right? Rather than, if a guy comes from Wisconsin, they've got bears in Wisconsin. Why is he coming to Northern Manitoba? He wants to shoot a nice bear, to a place that's got him
worked, so and then the guides have got the trail cameras and there's a good one coming here. That's why they're coming. So it's sometimes sad a little bit or whatever, disappointing, but it's just, is what it is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into hunting?
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've always been really interested in hunting and fishing as a kid. And it's just something inside me, really, honestly. Like I come from I call it a non-hunting family. Like my dad didn't hunt. Like he had a 22 and if I wanted to go out, he would take me for squirrels or rabbits or something like that. But really we weren't hunting. Like we didn't go deer hunting or anything like that. So he didn't hunt. My dad's a little bit of a softie when it comes to animals. He doesn't love it. He likes to eat the meat kind of, but he's also a fussy eater too. Which is really cool. I'll tell you a story if you remind me about like eating bear meat, and just getting him to eat bear meat was pretty cool. But yeah, I'll tell you that later. So I've always been interested in hunting, and I had friends that hunted. I had an uncle on both sides too. My dad has a brother who hunted, and then my mom has a sister who married a guy who's into hunting. And so I would go with them sometimes, or I talked to them about it, and really got into it. But it wasn't until I was about 16 that I really could go, because then I had my license and then I could go hunting. And then my friends hunted. And so one year, me and some buddies, he had some land and we deer hunted, and we deer hunted pretty seriously. My one friend, a lot more seriously than the rest of us. He owned the land. And he had a bunch of deer pegged down, and I had a borrowed 303 British. That was the gun that I used. And he tagged out on opening morning of rifle season. And then I went out with him one Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had hockey practice and I had to miss hockey practice. And we went out and I used his gun, and 3:00 in the afternoon.
What caliber of gun?
It was a 308.
Oh, it was
308
okay.
Parker and Hale.
Yeah.
And he had put a scope on it that year, and yeah. And I wasn't used to with the 303 that I was using had crazy heavy trigger, and I wasn't used to how light his trigger was. And this giant buck walks across the field, like right in the middle of the day, 3:00 in the afternoon. There's some does on the other side. It was the rut, and so I'm sure that's what he was doing. It's never happened to me since. You know what I mean? And I missed that deer, and he just stood still. And he's like, load again. And so I loaded it again, and boom, whop, and it hit him, and he ran about 20 yards and then face planted, and that deer ended up scoring like 154. It grossed it grossed in the 160s, but he's got a bunch of junk going on.
Who cares? Gross is this?
Oh, I know.
Real score.
Yeah, it's a 160 class deer.
Wow.
And just a giant buck. I've never killed one that big since.
Well, it's
a really big deer.
A lot of guys won't kill a deer that size.
And so, and I always, the thing that I tell people is I've actually never shot a deer under 130. I've just never done that.
That's impressive.
I've only shot half a dozen, but never, I just don't shoot small rack bucks because I'll either shoot, back in the day when you could shoot a bunch of deer. Yeah. When I was going to university, we could shoot like 3 deer where I was living. I'd shoot does right away, fill the freezer, and then just hold out for a big buck and either get them or not get them. And more often than not get them. But yeah, just wanted to shoot a rack buck, and maybe that was why. I don't know, but yeah,
that's impressive.
I think my smallest is a 128 and 7.
I wish I could say that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't, and it's not like I care. Like if someone shooting a deer is great. It's fun. I love it. I just, when I shoot a buck, I want to shoot a nice one. Like I come down for 3 days of deer hunting when I get my days off, and I go to my buddy Ryan's place, and it's sometimes ridiculous. Like I'll pass on these little deer, and I'm like, Brett, you only got a couple days here, but it is what it is. I just want to shoot a rack buck, and I just wait. And if I don't get them, I don't get them, and that's fine.
That's a good attitude to have. You aren't going to kind of adjust your standards for anyone else, or it's personal, right?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah,
that's what most of hunting, it seems, is. And it's personal, and then we, as hunters, we kind of get offended when somebody doesn't follow our personal way of doing,
which is weird.
It is. Yeah, I've been there though too. It's like the whole debate with broadheads and that mechanical fix. It's like, and it's like, you know what? Both are fine at the end of the day. Yeah. Both work. People use them for their own reasons.
Right.
Yeah, there's certain things I wouldn't necessarily recommend. Like if you're pulling 40 pounds back, I wouldn't recommend an expandable at that point, right? Things like that.
Parameters and
exactly,
things,
a bit more common
sense. But it comes to killing a deer legally, do what you want to do. And that's great, you know, and I think that I've gone through my little ways of judging or not judging people. And I just come to the point that it's just fun to deer hunt. And hunters are funny people because we meet, you know, in the grocery store or at the bar or wherever we meet, you know, across the kitchen table, and I like you, but if I see you in my spot, I don't like you anymore. You know what I mean? And then we're funny people. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I like you till you're in my spot, and then you better walk backwards out of there.
Yeah. Stephen Ranella talks about that one time. Like, we need to recruit more hunters, but then I'm not going to take that guy and that guy to my spot. And so then we have this conundrum. We have this paradox that we're running into.
Yeah, that's just the thing. I've had people ask me to take them out, and when I was newer, I would, because I was tore up about it. I still am, but now with kids getting into it, I'm more selective, and it's just my time is not there.
No.
If you want me to take you out, you got to pay me.
Yeah.
No, that's unless you're like a family friend or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's just, I want to see the drive too.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, are you willing to really push it? Like,
Yeah.
I ended up shooting that little bull in the prairie there, that moose, and I had my Toyota Corolla.
Yeah.
Cut it up, drove back to Winnipeg with it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, what drive do you got? I was baiting bears with the Corolla as well.
Yeah. Well, when I was 16, it was a Pontiac 6000. I can't tell you how many doe deer went in the trunk of that car. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Did you do the gutless method or?
No, we usually gutted them. That was what I knew.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was supposed to do. And so I had a friend who was a meat cutter too. And he liked it when I kept the hide on. And so he would
cleaner.
Cleaner. And he liked it to sit there for a couple of days with the hide on and just easier. And so that's again, that was my info. That's what I knew. And I was never far from a road. Like, I was usually in a field close to a road. So we drag it to the road or whatever, you know, and does aren't that big, you know? And so I shot a lot of does, man.
Well,
because I could.
Yep. And as a new hunter, I think people need to shoot.
Right.
Like I was telling Noah the other day, I think before somebody starts going for, well, your story's a bit different. Like 128's the smallest.
Right.
That's still a nice deer,
right?
So big buck hunting is tough. You know, it's very difficult. You need a lot of time. You need the right area.
Yeah.
Everything needs to come together perfect for it to happen on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
So my kind of number is like, you need to shoot 10 animals.
Sure.
Before you like think that you're a big buck hunter.
Right.
Like, because when that big buck comes in, you got to know how to kill it.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Keep your nerves under control. Yeah. Settle that pin or those crosshairs on an animal.
Yep.
Learn how to do that. And so we're adding up the numbers that he had. He's at 9. So I'm like, you're one away. Still got some time. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
This is my dad's number.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's funny. Did I answer your question? How I got into hunting? Kind of.
Yeah. You shot that deer. 154 net, 160 gross.
Yeah.
How did you feel after that? Were you just shaking, like
super jacked? Yeah. Like, we ran out there, you know, and he was still, you know, kind of quivering a little bit. He was dead, but my buddy was just like, "What did you shoot?" Right. And we were just super jacked. And then the next year, like, I'm going to get another big one. It took a while. Cause then and then the thing was, I didn't have a gun, and I borrowed that 303, but then that guy moved away, and my parents were kind of like, "Whoa, I don't know if this is legal," and they didn't know all the parameters around rifle owning, and my dad wasn't comfortable with it. So for me, it was kind of like, if I was going to get into hunting seriously, and I was still under 18, I couldn't buy a gun, then I needed to figure out a way to archery hunt. And so I mowed lawns like crazy. And I've told you this story before, but I just mowed lawns like crazy. And I think I earned like $15 a lawn or something. So finally, when I had about $300, and you got to wait, because then you have so-and-so's grass, but it's not growing fast enough, because you can't cut it, you know, more than twice a week, because then they're kind of like, doesn't need cutting, you know?
Yeah, you're fertilizing it, putting water on there.
You know, and just trying to rack up some cash. And I drove into Heights in Winnipeg. I grew up about an hour and a half outside of Winnipeg in a small town called McGregor, and drove into Heights with my $300 that I finally earned, because I figured for some reason I had this idea that was what a bow would cost me, $300. So when I had $300, I drove into the city. And I don't know, Ron was really good to me. He was really nice to me. This kid that really wanted it really badly. And I don't know what the bow actually cost. And I just kept asking him. I said, I got $300. And so he showed me some bows, and then he'd put something on. I was like, well, what does that cost? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And he was really good to me. And so I bought that bow. I bought a bow. It was made by Champion, but it had a Buck Knives sticker on it. You know,
I had one very similar to that.
Buck Knives Saber is what it was called. And my buddy, another friend of mine, bought a Champion. I think it was called a Yukon, and they're very similar bows. And I think it was a Winnipeg company.
Yeah,
right.
You're correct. Yeah.
And so I bought that bow. I gave him $300 cash. I think he just threw in some kind of flipper rest and some kind of little iron sights, and I think I shot that bow fingers.
No way.
I didn't buy a release.
I've never done.
Yeah, I know.
I've never shot a bow.
I know.
Fingers,
I think I started fingers, and then I think he threw in 3 arrows for me, and I know I couldn't afford those arrows. And then I wrecked those arrows real quick, and I had to mow lawns again until I could buy more arrows. You know, and so. Yeah, that's what I did. I tried to go hunting that way, you know.
The thing that I like about that story is just shows that there's a natural inclination in a person, a desire to hunt.
And it was just all raw, and it was just me, and there was a lot of stupidity and a lot of dumbness, and I just learned it all super trial and error, super
I love
my
that.
way, you know.
Because in today's climate here with social media
and YouTube and
people are kind of missing that.
Sure.
I know we sound like a couple old guys now, but really it is true, because it's like my first experience bow hunting. I got into it. I was living at my aunt's place after high school, and I shot a deer when I was 17. That was the first deer with a rifle here in Manitoba. And I didn't want the rifle hunting thing. Like they were pushing bush, right? That's how I was introduced to it. But I read all the magazines, and that's why I started the Hunt Lore podcast too, because the stories captivated me. So I'm like, I'm in Manitoba, I'm hunting big white-tailed bucks. Yeah. And so the guys are like, okay, you go over to this bush, you sit here, we're going to go through here, the deer are going to come out. So I sit down right by a bale of that little come here deer call. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
It's just a little disc or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, okay, he comes out there, that big buck's going to come out there, I'm going to blow on it.
He's going to stop.
No, these deer are running like 100 kilometers an hour. Yeah. Like I'm trying to get them in a borrowed rifle from my uncle, 30-06, sighting in and mounted to going out to another uncle's place, shooting at like a piece of printer paper, but my uncle doing all the shooting.
Okay.
So that's what it was. There you go. Yeah. There's a rifle. It's on. Yeah. There was no proper. Yeah. So then I knew I didn't want to do that. So living at my aunt's place there, working on the farm, all the landowners around there said, you can hunt here, but only with a bow.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sure. Went to Heights, same thing. Picked up Champion. Yeah. Did all that. Nice. So that's kind of just how I got into it. Happenstance, just fluked into it. I didn't realize I wanted to do it.
Right.
I had no inclination of doing it. But
it found you.
Yeah, it found me. And so that was like so now kind of going with my train of thought there, I was scouting for bachelor group of bucks, right? Because I'm going to hunt opener, and I found all these bucks, and I've never found a group like that in that area since. And there's some big deer in there. I was so naive. I thought, I was on the phone with my dad. Oh yeah, there's Manitoba records in there.
Yeah.
I had no idea there was like a Manitoba bow hunting records club.
Right.
Like all this stuff. I had no idea. And I actually liked that back. That's how I got into it. Just not knowing anything. Right.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. Like the imagination is just going wild. But what I would do when I would go scout them, I'd also drive my truck on the dike there, and I'd scare them all away. No idea that they wouldn't come back. Mm-hmm. And then I'd take my cousin, just wait till you see all these big bucks. Mm-hmm. Did that a couple times.
Hey,
they moved.
Lessons learned.
Yeah.
It all adds up. And all those experiences kind of that they teach you, and there's a way to shorten that learning curve, but sometimes it's valuable to go through those hard ways, hard lessons learned.
I agree.
I like what you said about the drive too, because I'm a little bit like that. Like where I live in Flin Flon, a lot of people know that I'm a fisherman, and they know I'm pretty serious, and they're always like, "What? Can you take me out? Can you take me out?" And yeah, I love to take people fishing, but a little bit sometimes I'm like, "Hey man, when I moved here, I just got in my boat, I just went exploring. I went slow, and I figured it out, and you can do that too, and just do that. And I like to take people, but don't pull your phone out and mark my spots. You know what I mean? Like that's not what we're doing here.
You kind of have to pat them down before, right?
And I always tell them, turn your location services off. Because if you send a picture to someone and it's got that pin on it, you know, that's a no-no.
Yeah. The rule in your boat should be you take the pictures and then you can send them.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. People like, hey, I was guilty of it too. When I was younger, I wanted things like kind of like given to me a little bit because you'd see the pictures in the magazines or whatever. And you go to the archery shop, the brag board, which is like basically obsolete now.
Yeah. It was the message boards and then it was Facebook and now it's Instagram or whatever it is now, Snapchat, whatever the kids are doing.
I honestly don't even care. I hate all that stuff, but it's kind of a necessary evil if you want to grow something these days. But yeah, so it's like you kind of want the easy route, but being older now, having done it for 20 plus years now, it's like, it was worth it to grind it out.
Yeah. And guys have showed me spots and showed me things and I'm always appreciative and we don't do anything in a bubble. But I like what you said about having the drive because, you know, you want to make sure someone's got that before and you're going to get something in return. You know, you show something and someone something and they're going to give you something back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's important too.
Yeah. But you're right. We don't do things in a bubble. And
and it's hard for, I think, kids nowadays with all those expectations that are getting into, or not even just kids, but people that are new to hunting and they watch the YouTube videos, they see the Instagram posts and people only put the best stuff on there. You know, they don't put their necessarily doe hunts or whatever. And then they think it has to be this way. You know, you create this culture where it has to be big bucks and it doesn't have to be. Yeah. You know, it can be whatever you want it to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was hunting Ontario one year because you can bait out there. I've always wanted to bait deer legally because I thought it was easier.
Right.
And I learned that it's not.
Right.
It's
like baiting bears.
Yeah. Like I don't actually, if it was legal here, I probably wouldn't do it.
Sure.
You know, because I think there's better ways to get big bucks now.
Right.
But I went out there thinking I was going to shoot something big, and it was the year there was a downturn, like 2013. There was a downturn in the deer population with all the hard winters.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was just having the same forkhorn and a doe and two fawns coming in. Yeah, I was feeding them. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
you know, and I made a video of it, and a buddy was commenting. He's like, "Yeah, I watched that video. This little buck comes in." Then I see you drop back. I was like, no way, he's actually going to kill this thing?
Right.
That's all. And he was surprised, but he was actually kind of pumped on it.
Sure.
You know, so there was, I know it's not an Unrau buck there, but but it just kind of goes back to like no expectations or like just you're doing it for personal reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like people don't have to get wrapped up into social media expectations.
Yeah. And I've really dropped off social media in a lot of ways. Like I played it hard for a few years there and I wanted it just to be about fishing mostly. I have a few hunting things on my Instagram, but then I just dropped right off it because it became, I was doing it for social media and I was just like, I had a little moment. I was like, this is dumb. I'm doing this for social media. I'm fishing for social media, not for myself, not for fun, not to bend the rod, not to catch a big fish because it's exciting. I was like, I got to get one because I got to get a picture because I got to put it on social media. And that's ridiculous.
Oh, I hate that.
You know,
and I've been there.
Yeah. I think it's like anything. You just go through these little, experiences and you learn things as you go through them. And that was one of them. And so I've just dropped off and now I put things on there if I feel like it. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, why am I taking a picture? Because I want to have this memory for myself, And so maybe share with people, but that's a different thing, So
I agree because this year bear hunting, an hour into my hunt, I had like a 7-footer, just under 20, 19, nice. 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
I passed him up. He gave me so many shot opportunities. Yeah. And honestly, to be honest about it, I'm like, well, this is just, it's a big bear.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, there's a lot of 7-footers that are going to be shot this year.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I need something for the YouTube channel, something bigger, better, and afterwards I was just, why did I pass that up?
Yeah.
Like I have a family.
Right.
I can't be putting endless amounts of money and time into this. So what am I doing? And my buddy, him, Ryan Derlego there. He's like, yeah, what's wrong with you? Like, you should have shot that bear.
Yeah.
Like, and went over all the reasons why.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would have shot that if there were no cameras around or anything.
Yeah.
Because it was a nice bear.
Yeah.
And it was big enough. Like, how big do you want?
Yeah.
So eventually, you want to get that huge 8-footer if you can, but that's extremely rare. So
I've been internet stalking Ryan and Jason for years.
Oh yeah. They're good guys. You'd get along with them.
Yeah, really man. Good. Like when I was guiding. So, and then after I got into hunting, then I was like, I need to find a way to hunt as much as possible. And when I graduated high school, I was like, I'm going to find a job guiding. And mostly it was for fishing. And hunting just kind of fell in my lap because I applied for a job with Kississing Lake Lodge. Kississing Lake Lodge is what it's called. Kurt Enns is the owner. And I went for my interview with him.
Okay, we just got to pause that.
Yep. Well, I got a question for you. I'll save for a minute, and then you can talk about it.
Okay.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah. Where were we?
I was talking about getting into guiding.
Yes.
And how
and Ryan and Jason and all that.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. And so I worked for a guy named Kurt Enns, and he owns Kississing Lake Lodge, and he owns a flight service, a float plane service, and things like that. And when I went for my interview with him, I thought I was going to work at his main lodge, Kississing Lake Lodge, and be a fishing guide. And he said, well, I actually just bought this other place called Deerhorn, and it's going to be more of a hunting place. It's going to have fishing too, but I'm going to run my bear hunts and moose hunts out of it. It's in Saskatchewan. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. And then he's like, what's your experience with hunting? So I told him, and he's like, how much bear hunting experience do you have? And I said, well, none, And he's like, well, I got a couple of guys up there that are trappers, and they're going to kind of help run it, but then maybe you could come and help. So sure, that sounds great. And that's what we did. And I bear guided there and fish guided at a place called Deerhorn Lodge. And actually, to keep the story going, it doesn't connect to Jason and those guys right at all, but I'll bring it around. I was going to university, and I was going to be a teacher, and I was working for him in the summers. And then he approached me, and he was going to buy another lodge, but now his business is getting big, and he wanted to hire just kind of some managers to manage each place. And he said, and I had just gotten married, would you and your wife want to manage Deerhorn? And I just thought that was my dream world, right? I'll manage the lodge and yada, yada. And so we did that for a year, and he still let me finish my degree, which he never should have done, because then I would have been locked in a lot of ways. And he let me finish my degree, and then we went there that summer and managed it and ran it. And I ran it I did the business stuff in the wintertime while I was going to school as well. I didn't have classes on Fridays, so Fridays was my Deerhorn day, and I'd make phone calls and order things and do all the things I needed to do. And then my wife came up with me for a season, and she hated it. And she's a nurse, and she wants to take care of people. She has it just like I have it in me to hunt and fish. She has it in her to take care of people. And she hated taking care of people who are paying. She likes to take care of people who need care. And so she hated every minute of being up there. And being stuck in the bush is a unique thing. Like, we were flying only, right? And being stuck in the bush is a unique thing. And so she hated it. And so in October, I had to have a hard conversation with Kurt and just say, we're not going to come back. And we never really, didn't have to keep going. So we quit essentially. And then I got a job I finished my degree and got a job as a teacher in Flin Flon. There's a whole story to that too. But we moved to Flin Flon on July 1st, and July 8th, the big forest fire ripped through and burnt Deerhorn to the ground.
Wow.
And so I would have been jobless anyway, or he probably would have moved me around in the company, but then, it's hard to find work for everybody sometimes, and so I think it worked out really, really well. And my friend Ryan, who I told you about, he was there at the time. And he was responsible for getting everyone out of the lodge. And it's a crazy story. He woke up in his cabin to orange flames everywhere and stuff like that. Yeah, like the fire was moving north of them. It was moving west to east. And it was about 80 miles north of them. And they had been in contact with resources and things like that. And they had told him, well, should be all right. We'll let you know if it looks like it's getting out of hand. And that was that night. And then he woke up that morning. The wind had just shifted direction in the night, which it usually doesn't do. And yeah, so that lodge burned down.
That's scary.
It's a crazy thing. And so it just worked out that maybe that was for the best, that she didn't like doing it. And then we moved to Flin Flon, and now I just hunt and fish kind of for myself, and mostly, man, people come and visit. People love to come and visit because it's the playground.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they like to come and visit and bear hunt but mostly fish, and things like that. But I met some friends of mine from Steinbach the first year I was guiding, who took me to the Manitoba Records banquet.
Yeah, the bow hunting
banquet.
MBRC.
And Ryan Derlego won like every award. And I was like, who is this guy? He just kept going up, And then I don't know how I internet stalked him, maybe through Bowsite.
Yep.
Probably Bowsite. And then Jason Carcass. And I think he got kicked off of Bowsite. I'd like to know why. That'd be an interesting story.
Well, I know why.
I'm sure you know why. Anyway, I'd like to ask him someday.
It's actually not that interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But
he was selling his house.
Oh.
And he listed it.
Of course.
And then they kicked him off.
Right.
And you know the sad thing with that? Getting kicked off Bowsite?
What's that?
You lose all your trophy photos.
Right.
See, it's a nice record on Bowsite.
It is.
You have every year. I need to back them up too.
Sure.
Because what if I get kicked off? I say
right.
the wrong thing or promote the wrong thing accidentally on purpose there. So then it's like, that's how I did the same thing. I internet stalked those two fellas as well.
Well, I mean, they're amazing hunters, right? So yeah, I remember going to that banquet and just being like, wow, that's crazy. This guy like kills everything. Yeah. You know, he's a good hunter.
Yeah, he sure does. He's helped me tremendously, like with the deer hunting and the bear hunting, obviously, but just hunting in general, just seeing how he reads sign. There's other guys in Manitoba who were part of the MBRC that are very good hunters as well. They said Derlego's the best at reading sign.
Interesting.
And this is coming from a guy who wouldn't admit much.
Right. Yeah.
And so when he did that and admitted that, I was like, okay, so that's my man crush is validated.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So then after the guiding, you did a bit of that for a couple of years there, or a year, and the fishing.
Yeah, and then I moved to Flin Flon, and I just moved on with just my career and having a family and that kind of a thing, and fished really hard. I thought I would hunt more, and I hunted moose quite a bit before my kids were born, just when I could, like weekends and things like that, taking my days off. And my wife was a shift nurse, so I would just take my days off when she wasn't going to be around and things like that. And hunted moose pretty hard up there. And I had 4 hunts in 4 years in a row that if they had gone just a little bit different, I think I was the king of moose hunting. And you couldn't tell me anything about moose hunting, but I never killed a bull. Had opportunities those 4 years in a row, local, and then one time local, real close to town. And then another time getting way back in the bush with the boat and getting way deep in. And then another time on a fly-in. And all 4 experiences saw nice bulls, could have killed nice bulls, just needed it to happen a little different, you know, and just didn't. And then, so, there's some cool stories there.
I've been there with moose hunting.
Yeah.
And it's tough to get experience moose hunting. Like if you've hunted them 4 or 5 times and you get a few opportunities. Sure. It's like, you're kind of getting it. Like you're an experienced guy, because how many guys actually moose hunt that often? Right. You know, you're really fortunate if you're hunting them every year. Sure. I'm going on my 5th fly-in personal. Yeah. 5th fly-in this year. I've yet to kill a moose. Right. So it's like, it's not easy. This is the year. And I've had a couple opportunities close. Like you said, if things turned out, I'd have like a 55-inch plus on the wall, you know, I'd have a 40-inch plus there, you know, it would be all great. Yeah. Be awesome. But
well, the one we were floating down the river and just calling this little, it is a river, but it's a small river. And we're just floating down, calling and just looking. It's the middle of the afternoon. So we'd done our morning sit and now we're just kind of moving. So you get complacent after a few days, you know, of not seeing anything, hunting ghosts, we call them. And I know that I had scanned ahead and looked at this clump of willows more than 4 times, I bet you. Definitely more than once, more than 4 times. I just kept looking ahead, calling. And when we got right beside that clump of willows, my buddy Ryan, he says to me, moose. And I just didn't even look. I just reached down for my firearm, looked up, and I just saw the butt of a moose just going back in the bush, just cracking. And he had nice full paddles.
Dang.
You know, it just could have been, should have been, would have been, right?
Yeah.
And then the other time we went on a fly-in hunt, we were hunting this big bay, and it's about a mile, and it's got 2 points on either end. And he would sit on the south point, and I would sit on the north point, and we would just kind of call into this bay. And it's small lake, small little fly-in lake, and we had like a little canoe that we would get there with from our camp back and forth to this bay. And the wind was wrong the one night that I had sat on my north point. We just didn't feel like it was the right wind, and so I went somewhere else. I dropped him off, and I went somewhere else. Well, sure enough, in my end of the bay, what's there all night? There's a nice bull, right? And he's guided in the Yukon, and he says, Brett, that was a nice bull, and it's a mile away from him, and he can see with the naked eye. He can see these paddles flashing, you know. And he said, Brett, it was a nice bull. And so we just figured it would be there in the morning. And so we just kind of come in quiet. We wait for daylight. It's not there. And we call, we wait, we call. We just kept thinking, I don't know what, he just vanished into thin air. And he wasn't there in the morning. We just thought he would be. Like when we went to bed that night, he was there. Mm-hmm. We just thought he'd be there because sometimes that's the way, right? But
they are ghosts. They're frustrating.
Yeah.
Like we're going for 14 days. It was 17 days.
That's a long time.
I had to pare it down to 14 for my brother, and so he can catch a flight back home.
But, and here I am trying to convince my buddy Ryan when I go on a fly-in to go for 4 days. And you know what I mean? You had to pare it down to 10 or 17 or whatever.
Yeah.
14 you said.
Yeah, 14.
Wow. Yeah. That's a long time.
Well, I just know. Okay, so when you go on these flying moose hunts, it's like you have some action, maybe the 23rd, 24th, 25th of September. Then it's dead for a bit. They might be with cows. And then it opens back up again in October. It's like, I want to be there for the whole thing. I don't want to miss a thing. But the thing with that is you do get complacent.
Oh, yeah.
After 5 days of not seeing anything.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't hunt as hard. Maybe you don't get up as early. You don't stay out as long.
Yeah.
All these things. So it's like, okay, I know what it is. It's the grind. Like it really is a big grind. It's fun. Obviously we're doing it because we enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there's an element that isn't fun.
Yeah.
And that's not talked about on social media.
No, there's a lot of things that are hard, and timing is so important. And I say that with fishing all the time too. Like, I mean, if you do a fishing derby, you want to be a good angler and you want to be able to get them every day. And then, you do a derby and then that really weeds out who gets them every day on the day and who doesn't. And so a lot of good hunters and a lot of good fishermen is just because they're good at timing, that they have the time and they just know how to just time it right. And that's important. Hitting the season in the right way at the right time and in the right spot and doing the right things, all those matters. But timing is a super, super important factor.
And that's the biggest thing I learned from Derlego and Kershane is the amount of time they spent.
Yeah.
Like Ryan has one story. He's going to get on here eventually. He's a pretty busy guy, but he has one story where he was hunting this buck. I think it was 50 sits. And then he finally got a shot. He killed it.
Yeah.
But people don't see the 50 sits, the mundaneness of driving out there. Like this November, I have from the 1st to the 14th off. Because I've kind of found, I think that's the prime time in there. Okay. Probably like the 7th to the. We've talked about this.
We always say it's the 10th to the 14th is what we say. Yeah, where we hunt.
And I could see that.
Yeah.
I shot mine on the 9th last year, but I think that after the 14th, it kind of cools down. Yeah. They lock up, and then I did notice that the deer moved out of the area where I got my buck because I took Noah back out there to see maybe if he could get something. There wasn't much sign back there.
Right.
And it seemed like they all moved to like probably some feed because the snow was quite deep.
Yeah.
So they're just moving out of the area.
And maybe I just convinced myself that's the good time because I get a day off for Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
So then I'm just convincing myself that that's when it is because I'll just take my days off around there and then zip to my buddy Ryan's place.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
4 days. And
I have another good buddy who I want to get on here too. If he's more reclusive, right? He's not on any social media, but he keeps good detailed records. And he's been telling me last couple of years, November 4th to the 14th.
Okay.
That's the best time, that time span. Yeah. Now to pare it down to a couple days, weather can be a factor, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like that 10 to 14th, it's all good. Like it's
like they say, photo period for whatever that all is and triggers it. And then there's other factors, but it's important.
Yeah, that's right. So it's time in the stand is what you're getting at there too. Like
100%
timing.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend, James. I think you know him. I think he's messaged you a few times.
Yeah. James, what's his last name?
Domenko.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's not on social at all anymore.
He killed a giant bear, man.
He killed a giant bear last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't kill a bear last year and I should have, but because we really hunt for the meat. We hunt bears for the meat.
So delicious.
It's awesome. And the fat. And he killed that big bear. And then I felt like if I shoot a bear, we're not going to be able to eat all this meat. So I just kind of I kept baiting and I kept going, but I really hardly touched my weapon because I was like, I don't need to. And that was in the back of my mind. He killed a really nice big bear and we ate every bit of it, and it was, it was kind of funny. And then I had a really nice one this year come in. Like you said, you didn't shoot yours. I didn't shoot this bear for a whole bunch of reasons. He's been coming in for 3 years and he comes in real quick. He's the first bear on the bait every year on my bait. And I think he dens there and I'm sure he does. and he's got a big white V on his chest, and I kind of know him. I know him through trail cam photos. I've never seen him with my eyes. And I knew he was coming, and I know that when the rut hits, he takes off every year. And so I was like, I got to get in there. And I think I had talked to you, and I think I had messaged Ryan Derlago because I just bounced things off. Is this a shooter? You know, I know it's a shooter. And I sent it to him, and he's like, yep, that's a shooter, right? And if he says it's a shooter, it's a shooter.
For sure.
And he got a big pumpkin head, and he makes the barrel look like small.
Nice.
You know, and he's a big bear. And so I know he's coming, and I know he likes early mornings. So I sneak out there one day, and he doesn't come in the morning. I'm like, what the heck? He comes every morning, you know? And so I sneak back in there that night, and it's a Wednesday. And I got to teach the next day, Thursday. And I hear him, and he doesn't like it that I'm in there because I can hear him popping, and he's huffing, and he knows I'm there. I can't see him, but he knows I'm there. And he's straight downwind. And he takes over an hour to come in. And then when he comes in like a cat, just crazy quiet from the opposite side. And he's stepping in every spot that he's ever stepped before, just really gentle. And he's looking at me the whole time. And he knows I'm there. And every time he'd sit down facing me, looking at me, checking the wind. And then he'd go to the barrel, he'd tip the barrel off and take in the bush. He took off into the bush. And then it took him another 45 minutes to come back. And by this time, it's like 10:45, 11. And we have light late in May, June, you know, so you're sitting on stand till midnight. If you wait right till dark, you're sitting there till midnight. And it's like 11 o'clock and it's dusky, and he knows I'm there, and he's on edge. And I drew back on him one time, and he spun and he looked at me. And maybe I need to move my stand back. Like I'm tight. I'm like 12, 14 yards, you know, like I'm pretty tight.
Yeah.
So maybe I should move that stand back a little bit. But whatever. It's just the way the setup works, just where the trees are and where the barrel is and things like that. And so I drew back on him one time, and I thought about taking a frontal shot. I didn't want to do that. I mostly respect to him, you know, because I know him, and I'm just like, if I want to kill him, I want to kill him properly. You know, I want to make a good shot. And so I didn't take the frontal shot because of the angle, because frontal shot, you know, like, I'm not saying it won't kill him. It didn't feel right at that time, you know? And if I'm off, that's a problem. And so he just never gave me a real good, like you and Noah were talking about in the one podcast, like they move a lot and they move funny. And just because they're on a bait doesn't make it easy. Sometimes it makes it harder, you know? And my friend James and I, we always say that about hunting bears over bait. People say, oh, it's easy. I'm not going to hunt an animal over bait because it's too easy. And we just look and we just say, that's the hardest hunting we actually do. And not just the hunting, but just the effort that we go through. You know, we go deer hunting, we just show up, sit in a spot. But if we're bear hunting, we've been there. And the gas we've put in, the miles we've put on our boots, the effort we've gone to get the bait, like it's a lot of work. It's crazy. It's the hardest hunting we do.
Especially up in Flin Flon. Like you guys don't have bait readily available to you, correct?
We got a sweet hookup, which I'm not going to give up.
Okay,
but we've got a sweet hookup, but if that goes away, then it will be hard. Yeah. Then it will be hard. Yeah. So we've got a great hookup as far like a local business.
Yeah.
That's helping us out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's only because we know the guy who's the manager.
But it's not like you have easy access, I'm guessing, to like corn or oats.
No, we got a driver
or trail mix or anything like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we use popcorn.
Yeah. So we've talked about that, and we did use popcorn up at Ganglers. Yeah. Because it's the lightest thing.
Yep. It's light.
But bears can go through it quick.
Yes, they can.
You know,
I make it hard for them to get. I've gone to small, tiny holes in my barrels now.
Yeah, it's always fun kind of redesigning the barrels, trying to figure it out. I went to swivels this year, so the cables wouldn't get. Yeah, do you kind of use the same thing, shaker barrels?
Yeah,
and they roll it around.
Oh, and then they just twist that airplane cable up.
If you get swivels,
that's a good idea.
They work. Like when Noah and I went out there, it's like, okay, Noah, just untangle the barrels. He flipped the barrel over like once, and he's like, it's this easy. He already knows that it's a pain to untangle if you have a couple barrels wrapped on the tree. Even one, sometimes they'll just twist it so crazy. Okay, somebody's trying to call. That's okay.
Okay.
I'm not going to pick up. So it's like, trying to redesign something.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we make it hard for them to get the popcorn, and it'll last a week if you fill up a barrel. But we have a lot of bears. And we always joke and say the bears always get it. You know, no matter what we do, no matter how hard we think we're going to make it, they figure it out and they get it. They get the bait. You know what I mean? Like they just their job is to eat. That's it. And so they sit there all day and figure out how to do that. And they always get it. You know, like we've hung beavers in trees and made it what we think is hard. And like we've got some hilarious photos of bears hanging from wire and bears doing crazy cockamamie things to get the bait. And they always do.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I love bear hunting because it's what we have access to up there. Our moose population isn't very good. We don't have any deer. And so we've got a plethora of bears. And bear hunting is just super accessible to us because we've just got so many. You know, like if you Google Manitoba bear population, do you know what it says?
30,000?
Yeah. I guarantee you there's 30,000 bears from Flin Flon to the Paw. I guarantee you.
Like you're saying it's way more than that.
Oh, it's way more than that. Like as a provincial population?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like we've got mine and James's bear sites are a mile apart, which sounds close.
Yeah, but if you have enough bears in the area.
One night I had 10 bears and he had 8 bears and not a one of them was the same bear.
Well, there you go.
Like you that's our little study. You know, I mean, we're not biologists, but you know what I mean? And we've got so many bears in our area. In some ways, that's maybe part of the issue there's a whole lot of issues for why we don't have moose, but there's no room for moose. We have so many bears, you know, and bears, I think, are the only animal that can smell a calf moose.
You know what? That's exactly. Bear hunting needs to become more popular for the moose populations, deer populations, elk populations.
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with moose, and I've listened to that Panoramic podcast where they talked to that dude about the moose issues, and it's a dynamic problem. There's more than just one issue, but I think every serious moose hunter should get a bear tag and shoot a bear. You know, just from a conservation point of view. You know. I don't know.
No, I agree. And the stigma that the meat is greasy. I guess the meat is a bit greasy, but that's what makes it good.
That's our favorite meat. We all shoot. He gets an elk every year, my friend James, and he shoots quite a. You know, his camp gets a bunch of deer, and I like to shoot a deer if I can and get the meat. But our favorite is bear meat, and we straight grind it, most of it. We straight grind it and use it in place of beef. And we use it in our spaghetti sauce and our chili and our tacos. You know, like. That's how we eat bear for the most part. And then we take roasts. And I was telling you before, like my dad's a really fussy eater and he doesn't love most wild game meat. And my parents what's their wedding anniversary? I don't know. A big one. Maybe their 40th wedding anniversary or whatever it was. And so we were just going to hang out at my brother's cabin and kind of do their anniversary for them, just like a family thing. And I was like, I'll do pulled pork. And I said, but I'm also going to do a pulled bear. I'm going to do both. You know, we'll have like a fun little picnic. And so I slow cooked a pork roast and I slow cooked a bear roast. And this is what I usually do for people. And I don't like to be that guy that tricks people into eating wild meat. I like to tell them ahead of time, I'm going to make wild meat, you know, and you can try it or you don't have to, whatever, you know, if you're like that. But I don't like to like trick them and then be like, haha, you just ate bear meat. You know, I don't like to be that guy. And so I made these 2 roasts and most people tried both. Some people didn't try the bear, but most people tried both. And almost everybody that tried both said they preferred the bear over the pork. And my dad, who's super fussy, he preferred the bear. And he said because it was less fatty. Yeah. It was less greasy than the pork.
Oh, well, there you go.
So he liked that.
So that's a big misnomer.
I think so. Yeah. And they have a good fat content. Like we keep saying we want to make sausage with it and I've never made sausage with it yet.
It's delicious.
Yeah. And then we're going to figure out what kind of fat, if any, we need to use because it does have a good little fat content to it. And the nice thing about bear fat is that like, it's not tallowy like deer fat is. It just melts away. It's more like a beef fat. It just melts away. It's really beautiful and it smells really good. Like deer fat has like a little bit of a smell to it and you don't want to get it into meat. You want to trim it out. Yeah. But bear fat, we don't worry about trimming it out ever, you know? And so, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's more like a jelly, right?
Yeah.
The bear fat.
Yeah. And it just melts when you cook it and it's awesome.
Oh yeah. This year we just cut up my bear from the spring and we did minimal trimming to it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why are we trimming all the fat off of this? Right.
Because you're used to doing that.
Yeah. We're used to doing that with deer and elk. I was like, let's just leave it in. And it's like, that adds the flavor to it.
And we render the fat too. And I fry my eggs in it. you know, and if my kids ever, like my kids get really dry hands in the winter from their mitts. And if they put bear fat on there, it's gone. Like they'll use like Aveeno or something else and it doesn't work. They put bear fat on it and it works.
Well, there you go. That's
it's awesome.
Well, Don is making a business.
Yeah.
Black Bear Remedies. Yeah. Check it out. you know? But,
absolutely.
But if you're hunting on your own, bears, well, you got a free source of bear fat right there. And you can use it, and people should. Yeah. Because it shouldn't be going to waste, being thrown in the trash.
Right. And when I was guiding, I never liked doing that. Like, it's legal. It's legal to spoil bear meat. And most guys would take the hide. And my issue with that big bear too was that I knew I was going to eat the meat. But I knew I didn't want to spend the money to like make a rug, you know, like mostly just that. I didn't want to spend the thousands of dollars it would take to make a rug. And I felt like this bear deserved that. There's a whole bunch of reasons I didn't shoot that bear. A, he didn't give me a great shot. And then B, it was just like, I don't know, man. Like I know him so well. I want to be able to like afford to like remember him, you know, and like, I can't do, like I keep the skull. I would do that. I would keep the skull. I'd eat the meat, but I probably would have just tan the hide or something like that. And I felt like he deserved more than that. So there's all these things playing in my head. And again, right or wrong or whatever anyone thinks, those are my decisions at the time. And so we eat the meat. Where was I going with that? Sorry.
Well, that's okay. But so you're just not a bloodthirsty hunter.
Not necessarily. No, like
not at all.
No,
you're very selective.
Yeah. Yeah. And for bears, it's like, if I'm going to shoot a bear, it's going to be for the meat first. Yeah. You know, and then decide what to do with the hide second. You know, I was going to tell a story. Sorry. Just when I was guiding, I never liked spoiling the meat. Like, and I would tell guys, they'd skin them out. They're like, well, Brett, what's it like? I'm like, it's good. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I always said, here's what I'm going to do. And I didn't know anything about cooking or bear meat. I would do it different now, but this is my experience. I said, I'll take the back straps off. We'll eat them tonight. I'll barbecue them. We'll put them in some teriyaki sauce and I'll barbecue them tonight. And if you like it, then I'll take the back quarters off for you and you'd send them home with you, you know? And almost everybody that tried the back straps always took all the meat home. And then we would bone it out, you know? Like every now and then I'd have a guest that just didn't take the meat home, but almost never once I cooked it for them, you know? And we take it up to the kitchen and we cook it that night. That was our supper that night. And they almost always took the meat after that. So yeah, bear meat's awesome.
And as guides, we're kind of responsible for changing the attitude around bear hunting and bear meat, you know, in that way.
Yep.
Same thing happened up at Ryan's camp. Guys weren't taking the bear meat. We're like, you aren't taking it? Okay, we're taking it.
Right.
And they saw how like we wanted it so badly. Then they're like, okay, I'll take some. You know, we never cooked it up for him that night. But somebody that works for Ryan, his wife cooked up some like corned bear. Mm-hmm. And so people would put it on their sandwiches and they're like, okay, this is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend of mine. He took one of my roasts and he made it into pastrami, and it was so amazing. Like we just eat on sandwiches for a week. It was so good. Yeah, there's so many things you can do with it.
Yeah, that would be good moose hunting. Right there, right?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
for the first few days or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's good. So you're hunting bears mainly in
right now. Yeah.
So what animals have you all hunted? This is a question I kind of thought of.
Yeah. So before. I started deer hunting, and I've turkey hunted a little bit. Yeah, when I was going to university, that was a fun weekend thing, and I never imagined how vocal they are. You know, like they're fun. The first time I ever went turkey hunting down by Walmanisa was where I was turkey hunting, because that's where my friend Ryan is originally from. Now he lives up in Pine Falls area, but I just ripped down there, and his parents had a little bit of land, and then he had permission on other places, and we had no idea what we were doing. And I was hunting with the bow, and we just go into the middle of this bush where he thought there was turkeys, and I had a little scratcher, and I scratched, and I couldn't believe, like, immediately I got a response. And I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. And so we hunted turkeys for that weekend, and then just became addicted to it. So I've done that quite a bit. Just how vocal and how responsive they are, but yet how elusive they can be. Like they're a fun animal to hunt. And I've got drawn for elk once, and I didn't put the time and energy into it that I maybe could have, should have. I was guiding at the time, and my wife was up at the lodge, and I came down for a week. And then my mind wasn't really in it, because my mind was still up north, and she was up there and things like that. So area 30, I think I got drawn in that Spruce Woods area, and it's a tough area to hunt. So, you know, I traipsed around and did that for a week, but I didn't get a bull. And then I've done a bunch of moose hunting just around the Flin Flon area. Yeah. And now I'm a priority one, and I got to decide what to do with that. So we'll see. I've got a friend in the, and I keep thinking maybe I'll try to get drawn there for moose, because there seems to be a good little moose population there. But I don't know. It's kind of funny to leave the north.
Yeah.
To go moose hunting in the south.
Like in the prairies.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing. So I just haven't done that. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different.
That's where I shot my one and only moose in the prairies. It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
You know, you're moose calling and there's a school bus driving by.
Yeah.
But then 2 bulls show up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Well, you gotta go where the animals are sometimes. And I just don't feel like they're really in my area, or I can't put the time in to really get them just with my schedule and things that I got going on. So
yeah, I think the saving grace in that area is all the private land.
Yeah, that's what it would be. Yeah, he's a farmer, and so he keeps saying, sure, come down.
That's what's protecting them there.
Yeah.
So hopefully they keep doing good there and guys don't shoot them all out. But
yeah, they're doing good in Saskatchewan.
Oh, really good.
Yeah. So we got a different issue going on in Manitoba.
Yeah. So what would you say your style of hunting is? I guess that depends on the animal you're hunting.
Yeah, it does. I think at heart, I'm an archery hunter, and I like to do that first. But again, just with my limited time, I've really enjoyed rifle hunting during the rut. And my friend Ryan, he's pretty much a rifle hunter, and so I do that with him. And yet, we're not like your typical rifle hunters. We don't. I say typical, maybe that's not a fair word to use, but we don't push bush and things like that. We sit, and he does all day sits. Like, we sit dusk till dawn, and like, that's a grind. And so when I deer hunt, that's what I do, because that's what he does. And we sit in the cold. And my thing that I figured out for that is using like an IWAM or a heater bodysuit or something. And that's been a game changer for me, because I've always gotten cold and then gone for a walk or something. But now I can sit all day if I have one of those and my thermos of tea, and I'll just be like, I'm just going to sit 20 more minutes, and then I'll have a little cup of tea. And then you drink your tea or whatever. And then, okay, I'm going to sit another 20 minutes. I'm going to have a couple of gummies or a Snickers bar or something, and we sit dawn until dusk, all day sits in his area, because it's the big bush. And that's just, I think, the style that is for deer hunting. And that's what he likes to do. And he kills good deer. So, and I've killed a couple of good deer with him there. So
another thing that typical rifle hunters here in Manitoba do is they sit a power line, or some, just big cut through the woods. Yeah. Is that kind of what you guys are doing?
Sometimes, like, because he's in the big bush, so you find some kind of visibility. So if it is a cut line and or a trail or whatever, he's got a couple of small hay fields in the bush that sometimes we'll sit on. But we've also just scouted where we think they are, and they're pretty nomadic deer there. But there's some key spots that they like to be in, especially that time of year. And you just kind of learn over the years. And then there's some little openings in the bush or just off, because we have some private land, but then there's some public land. And then you get some attention, because you're not that far from Winnipeg. So you get some attention during that time when people will come by. So then you have to find, the spots that the deer want to be in the bush. And so we've got a couple of those, where we've set up stands or blinds, or just go sit on a stool on a tree, in this little clearing or something like that. But yeah, we will sit on cut lines, because they'll cross.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but we try to sit a spot and sit it all day. And if a couple days go by and you haven't seen them, then we'll maybe go for a walk and find. And sometimes spots that have been traditionally good aren't good that year. And I remember his wife just went for a snowmobile ride. They've got cows, just to check the cows. But then she took a little extra loop, and she's like, Brett, there's a lot of tracks going on in this area. And I went and sat there, and I had my best day. I hadn't seen a deer. I was there for 4 days. I hadn't seen a deer the first 2 days, and then went and sat there and saw 7, so it's just keep adjusting and keep figuring that out too, So
that's a good day in the big woods.
Oh yeah.
7 deer.
Yeah, it was. And I had a nice buck that I probably should have shot. And he came, I was calling all day, and a deer came on the other side of the field, and I was sitting on a little old hayfield, and a doe jumped out of the bush and then jumped back. And I was like, oh, okay, there's stuff going on. And she was acting funny. Like, I thought maybe a hot doe or something. She was acting kind of goofy. And I was calling and doing all kinds of stuff all day, just getting aggressive. And this buck, and I say he's probably, I don't know, I didn't get a great look at him. He's like a 120 class, but he's all goofy. Like, he had like a messed up rack on the one side. I didn't look at him real close. I I just put my scope on him, like, do I want him? And then looked up at the rack and I was like, I don't know. And it was 2:00 in the afternoon and he was like on a mission. So I just let him go. Cause I was like, well, if he's on a mission, somebody else can be on a mission. I just let it be. And I saw a bunch of other does that day, but not another big buck. So is what it is. You know, that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. The eternal optimist.
Yeah.
In that way, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. No, that's
so
cool.
I don't know if that kind of answers my style a little bit, but yeah. And then bear hunting, you know, I'll shoot them with a gun, with a bow, whatever kind of works best. I've been kind of sitting in the stand with the bow lately. But 2020, we had an awesome year, and it was really fun because of the pandemic, because my kids didn't have soccer or baseball or all that other stuff. My kids hunted bears with me like crazy that year. And that's what we did. Me and my friend James, we just hunted bears. And it was so amazing. It was really great for my daughter. We had an amazing experience with her. And that usually I sit with the bow, but that night that she shot a bear with me, she didn't shoot it. I shot a bear, but she was with me. She was only 8 at the time. She's 10 now. We just hunted like crazy, and we had the gun that night, and it's kind of a crazy story. So we had set up baits with my friend James, and that was another great thing about bear hunting, and what it did was just how you can do it as a family, you know, and as buddies. And it's different than me and my friend Ryan. We get together and I think I see him for 4 days, and we don't, because we go sit in separate spots and then we see him for the evening and then don't see him all day, you know. But bear hunting, you kind of hang out together a little bit, set up stand, collect bait, do all that kind of stuff. And so we had hunted bears all year. And then it was like getting towards the end of the season, and we're like, we need to kill something here, you know, like we want the meat, we want to do that. So, and we had lots of bears. It was unbelievable how many bears were coming in. And I think the night that my daughter and I sat, we saw 16 bears that night, 16 different bears that she counted, and she could identify them, and she had names for a bunch of them.
That's awesome.
And she had this one that she called Scraggles, because he was scraggly looking, she said, you know, like his hair was all messed up. He didn't have a nice coat. And he was aggressive. Actually, the day we sat up the bait, he kept us in the stand. The day we set up the stand, the bait had been there for a little while. The day we have like a permanent stand, and we built our stand, and he came in and wouldn't let us out of the stand. Me and my 3 kids, and I have a pretty cool video of that, of us just sitting in the stand. And my kids are like, "Are you going to shoot him?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to. You know, I hope I don't have to."
He's scraggly.
Yeah. And actually, he was a nice bear. We ended up killing him. And he was 19 and 15, 16. Like, he was a nice bear.
20-incher.
Yeah.
We round up.
You know what I mean? Yeah, sure. Like he was a nice bear. And the reason we ended up killing him was because the night that we decided, okay, we're going to kill a bear, we'd seen a bunch of bears, and it was getting towards the end of the night. And I also like bear hunting because it's a good way to teach kids how to hunt and how to sit quiet. And so what if they don't? So what if they don't? It doesn't bother me. So this big bear's nicer bear is coming in. One of the nicest ones we'd seen that night. I just said to my daughter, I'm going to shoot that one. And she says, "What did you say?" You know, she says it really loud, and he like stops and freezes and then melts back into the bush. And I was like, "Honey, if I'm going to shoot this bear, you got to be quiet."
Yeah.
She's like, okay. So then he circles and he comes right back in. And as he's walking to the stand, boom, I touch it off and shoot him. And wait a little bit. He dies right there. We see him die. And I climb down. And if I were to do this all over again, I wouldn't have left so much space between me and her. But I'm pretty cavalier with bears.
Mm-hmm.
I still am of the opinion that like black bears are more scared of you than you are of them.
Big time.
But they're wild animals, and so you have to respect them. And this night there's something going on. I should check if it was full moon or what the deal was, but there was something going on. We'd seen a lot of bears. And we had seen Scraggles that night. He had come in and out of the bait. And he just acts different, man. He's just an aggressive bear. And so maybe she was like 15 yards away from me. I went straight to the bear, and she was still in the stand. Then she climbs down and whatever. And we had some space between us. And she comes over and we check out the bear. And I text my friend James, and he says, "Yeah, I'll be right there." And he's in his stand. So he comes on over. Him and another buddy come on over to skin the bear and get the meat and do all that. And I went and got my sled. Charlotte came with me. That's my daughter's name. We walked out, got my little, I use a ice fishing sled for a lot of things, hauling and baits, a handy little tool.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah. Slides over moss and all the things that we have up there, rocks and everything. So I went and got my sled, my tarp, and all the things we needed to sort out this bear, and brought it back in. And then my friend James and my friend Brent came, and we're skinning this bear. And my daughter says, there's a bear coming in. And look up the trail to the west of us, and here comes Scraggles. And he's an aggressive bear. He acts different. And sure enough, he comes in, and Brent grabs my gun. He's like, should I shoot it? And James is like, I got a tag. Yeah, please shoot it. And then by then, once we'd sorted all that out, and he's only like 15, 20 yards away, and he kind of like buggers off a little bit into the bush. So now we're kind of watching, and we're watching to the west. And about 15 minutes later, Charlotte says, here he comes again. That's Scraggles. And he's coming down the ridge on the east side of us. And he's coming down the ridge, and we shot that bear at 5 yards.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was coming in kind of sideways, like a wolf comes in sideways. Like he was coming in a little bit different.
He's coming in aggressive.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And I think that was his bait site, and he was used to being a bully. And like I said, the very first time we set up that bait, he kind of owned it right away. And so, yeah, we ended up shooting him. We had a tag, and we tagged him out, and we skinned him out, and we ate him. And he was a nice bear. He was 19 and whatever. He was 15, 16.
Did you square him out?
No, we never did. We should have done that with the hide. And we never did.
What do you think?
Like 6.5.
Okay.
Maybe 6'8",
Yeah.
but not.
So mid sixes.
Yeah, he wasn't a 7-foot bear, but he was a nice bear.
But big noggin.
Yeah.
On him.
Yeah, nice one,
Do they get big heads up there?
So they can, yeah. Like the one my friend James shot, that was a big bear. That was a booner.
21 or over 20 or?
I think that one was 21.
Nice. So all-time booner.
Yeah, I think so. I have to ask him the official score. Now he shot it in the neck, and with the rifle, and the bullet went through the skull. So he had to glue that skull back together.
Yeah.
So, but it still scored, and I have to ask him the actual score, but I'm pretty sure it was booner.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely over 20 and a half. But
what amazing story for Charlotte.
Yeah.
And
she's addicted to it. She loves it. She loves bear hunting with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But the hard thing is the late nights on school nights, but we get a lot of bears too. So we'll just, if I'll take her, sometimes we'll just go for a quick sit after school, 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, come back for supper, and we'll see half a dozen bears.
Yeah. Why not do that?
Sure. Yeah. And because they'll be in and out all day, with the prime time being, dusk or something like that. But yeah, we can do that, So
she's going to shoot a bear when she's 12.
Oh yes. Yeah. I've got a little 243 for her,
Perfect.
She has a little Mission Radic bow too that she shoots, and that thing adjusts up to 50 pounds. So I'll just keep working her up, and we'll see if she wants to do it that way. We'll do it that way, but I've got a little 243 that
either way would be good.
Yeah. Just to get some animals under her belt, get used to it. Yeah. That was a really fun night. 2020 was really fun for that. I mean, all the things going on, but it really blessed us with being able to hunt bears like crazy and get my kids into bear hunting.
And there was a student of yours that ended up shooting a monster too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He was a kid from Cranberry. He's a really good kid. He's a crazy hunter and fisherman too. And I really like him. And he got a really nice bear. I forget all the details around it, but he hunted it hard. And he thought it was going to be easy. It was kind of his first time, and he thought it was going to be easy. And he had this bear coming in easy. He came to the bait right away. He had the trail cams of it, and he had to work. He had to work for that bear. And so that was a little lesson for him too. Like when we say it's not just over bait doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think his was like a 7 or close to that.
Oh, for sure. It was big. I guess we're not as big into that as we maybe should be. Just all the
little size things. Doesn't. It's just something we've done in camp because I know skull bears are really hard to really get a perspective how big.
Yeah.
Some guys weigh them. Yeah. Okay, so if you want to weigh,
do they weigh them, or they say they weigh them with their eyes?
They weigh them with their eyes.
Put them on an actual scale.
Yeah. But if you're wanting the biggest, fattest bear, you're going to hunt in fall time.
Yeah.
As close to denning as you can.
Sure.
Right. That time. So we hunt them in spring. No point in really weighing them.
Right.
In my opinion.
Because it's a different bear in a lot of ways.
And it's harder to put them on a scale. There's a lot of things. I'm not dragging a whole bear out of the bush where I hunt. I just don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And then if you do the skull, some skulls, those bears have small bodies. One of the record bears in Manitoba for a number of years apparently was 5.5 footer, but he had a giant skull, long like a German Shepherd, you know?
I watched an old bear video. I think it was on VHS way back in the day. And there's a guy in the Duck Mountains, and he called them gorilla bears. You know what I'm talking about?
Les Nelson.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, Ryan knows this very well. They float a 3-wheeler across a river. I've never seen it. I'd like to see it, though.
I borrowed it from a buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
That is good.
Yeah.
That's what he called them, gorilla bears.
Yeah, because they're short and stocky.
He must have coined that term because
Maybe.
Yeah, Ryan started to use it, and then that's how I was introduced to it. And they're kind of cool.
Yeah, it's definitely on that video.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like one of the first pioneers, I guess, of kind of making bear hunting mainstream.
Yeah.
In that way. So yeah, going back to judging bears, and then we started squaring them. I don't know where it came from. I think maybe Alaska.
Maybe. And I know, like, if you like Clay Newcomb and those kinds of things, he's talked about that quite a bit in recent years.
Yeah,
and how to square a bear properly. And because some people will go by length, right? They go, that's a 7-foot bear, but is that a 7-foot square bear? What is that? And
but
so
then
learning
they pull
what that
one way,
and then they pull it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like how we do it. We skin it out, and I like my personal bears. I always take the head out because I'm right there. So why am I not doing it?
Right.
Client bears, we generally leave the head in so the taxidermist can measure everything. I don't get anything taxidermy, just tanned and whatnot. So I don't really care about any of that.
Right.
And then you lay it down like a rug. You measure from nose to tail. Now, where do you measure on the tail? The furthest hair? Do you measure where it attaches to the...
Interesting. I never thought about that. What does Newcomb say?
He kind of splits the difference, I think.
Just right to the... Yeah, okay.
Like kind of...
Sure.
Maybe he goes to the end of the nub where the tail ends. Or maybe I'd actually forget where he does it. But I don't want to go to the very end of the hair because in spring the hair is longer than in fall.
Yeah.
So then you're going to have, it's not going to be much, but you could get an extra inch.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect system.
No.
You know, so I take it with a grain of salt when somebody says I shot a 7-footer.
It's just a way to kind of
see,
get an idea. How big was that bear?
Yeah. So a 7-footer with an 18-inch head. So he had a pinhead. You know, because that's 18's a nice bear, but
different regions have different genetics.
Oh, big time. Out east, eastern Manitoba, they got like a real, like a J-Lo head.
Yeah. And they say in North Carolina, like the bears get giant, like 500, 600 pounds, but they got small heads.
Yeah.
So it's just hilarious.
They don't hibernate.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Then other guys clients that come up to Manitoba, it's like, they don't want to shoot a North Carolina bear.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, that's a slob of a bear. Like our bears are like athletes in a way, you know, like these are rugged bears.
And they are, like, people don't give them enough credit for what they do. And people, like my father-in-law, he's not a hunter, and he'll be like, well, they don't actually hunt down moose. I'm like, they can. You ever seen a bear move? They can do whatever they want.
Oh,
King of the woods, man.
They're nasty.
Yeah.
Like there's that one video going around, I think it was in the States. It was a mule deer doe. And there's a little black bear, like a little color phase. So maybe it was in, who knows, southern states somewhere. And this thing was just, didn't care. Taking the steer down. Yeah. You can hear the woman, the wife in the video, stop that, do something, call somebody. Right. It's like,
this is nature, man.
This is what it's like. And there's no emotion on the bear's face.
Yeah.
You know, he's just doing his business. That deer sounds horrible. Yeah. Like it sounds awful.
Yeah.
So a bull hunter or a rifle hunter,
right,
putting the shot where it needs to be, that's pretty humane.
Sure. Well, and people will make that argument and say this is probably the most humane death that this animal could have. Oh, you know, it's either going to do one of a few things, you know, die of old age, which is going to be miserable if something's going to kill it, or it's going to
starve.
It's going to starve, or it's going to freeze, or it's going to, you know, whatever's going to happen. It's going to get some kind of disease or whatever it's going to get. That's going to end it off in the wild. That's probably the most humane way it's going to die is with a bullet or an arrow.
And most wild animals die that way. Yeah. So they're not looking at a pretty death.
Yeah. No, nature is cruel.
Yeah, it is. So we've talked about a lot. I have one question here. I don't know if there's going to be a long answer, but who's kind of no,
I don't know. Long answers.
no, the long answers are good. I'm just like, I don't know if this question's good enough, but it's here, so I'll ask it. Who's influenced your hunting career?
Like quite a few people. Like when I was young, I had those two uncles on either side, like my mom's brother-in-law, and he took me lots and deer hunting, and he's a big muzzleloader hunter. So I learned how to muzzleload hunt with him and learned that. And that was fun. And he's from and muzzleload hunt.
Good deer hunting out there.
It was awesome. Yeah. And then we'd see moose every time. It was fun, you know? And so he was an influence. And then on my dad's side, he has a brother who hunts, and he's a pretty reclusive guy, pretty quiet guy. So, I had to kind of bug him a little bit, but he enjoyed taking me out. Like when I didn't have a gun, he would just take me with his gun and we'd walk together through the bush and do some sits and things like that. So when I was young, it was those two uncles. And I think it's important when you're young to have just some people that'll just kind of mentor you a little bit like that, you know? Other influences, my friend Ryan, and what's really interesting there is I hired him. So when I was managing Deerhorn, I hired him when he was like 18 and he knew nothing. Like I say knew nothing. He was like me. He was a young kid who was just passionate about it. And he came from a non-hunting family. His parents didn't. And so I hired him and I was his first guiding job. And he just worked for me for 1 year. And then that's when I quit. And then he kept it up. He worked for that outfit for quite a few years and worked his way quite a ways up the ladder there. And then he had the burning desire and he went out to the Yukon and he went to the Northwest Territories and he did Nunavut and then other outfits in Saskatchewan. And he's just been everywhere. And so just talking to him, and I've learned a lot from him, man, is he just like, I don't hold a candle to him anymore.
Well, when you guide like that,
you
rack up so much experience.
And his wife is an even better hunter than he is. Like they've done a couple of moose hunts for Kurt in their old spot in Deerhorn. Now he'll just run tent camps, moose hunts out of there. And if he doesn't get them to guide, he doesn't get anyone to guide. And it's usually Laura. And she's usually the one. And she's a really good hunter. And she's done more guiding than he has. Well, I don't know more, but as much.
Laura and Ryan, you need to come on the Hunt Lore podcast.
Yeah. They've got some good stories.
Interesting story.
Yeah.
And so are they into like canning and all this stuff? Like kind of living off the land a bit?
No, not as much. And it's kind of funny because I keep trying to get him to try bear meat and he doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't like it. Like I've canned bear meat, and this is the influence of my friend James. I have another friend who's really, and he hunts and fishes. My friend James D'Amico, he hunts and fishes, I think solely for the purpose of his actual hobby and passion is food production. Like he picks mushrooms, he picks berries, he grows a big garden. Like that's his thing. He cares more about the meat. Whereas when I go deer hunting, I'm like, yeah, I want the antlers. And then the meat, I'm really happy to have the meat afterwards. But first and foremost, whereas him, it's the other way around. Mm-hmm. He wants the meat. And then if he gets a big buck, that's cool. So, but yeah, Ryan and Laura don't love, they eat all their deer and they get deer sausage and eat deer steaks. And 1 year they had a moose and a bunch of deer. But I keep I keep trying to get him to eat bear, and he's just a little reluctant with that for whatever reason, But I sent a couple of jars of bear fat home with Laura the last time she was up moose guiding, and so I think she took it. So I don't know. I should ask him about that.
Well, there's some stigmas that are hard to get rid of with the bear meat, as we talked to. Yeah. So anybody like in the, I guess, outdoor industry, or did you rely more on people in your personal life?
Mostly people in my personal life. Guiding, I had a few run-ins with some people in the industry, like big time people that maybe put it off me a little bit, that I realized that it's all about sometimes being commercial. And I just didn't love that, I won't name any names, but just some quasi pro fishermen or pro hunters that I guided. And it wasn't my favorite thing in the world. And so I just wasn't always looking to those guys. I had a few man crushes on a few social media people like Ryan and Jason and some people like that, but kind of always gravitated more to the more down to earth guys, we'll call them, like the regular Joes.
So you didn't grow up reading articles like by Larry D. Jones?
Oh, sure I did. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, you can get Bowhunter magazine and Dwight Shoe or whatever. Yeah, sure I did. Yeah, I wouldn't call them influences necessarily, but but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, they influenced my career quite a bit, or a career, we call it a career, lifestyle or whatever, just because I didn't really have anybody telling me what to do. Sure. I had no one. I would hear, oh, this guy's a bow hunter. Right. I'd hear about Dwight Fair from Altona. I don't think he bow hunts much these days, but, oh, that's a bow hunter. You should talk to him. Mm-hmm. So it was like, just who bow hunts? Like, no one.
It's a small circle.
It is a small circle. Yeah. So that's, moving on to another question. Any trips planned for this year?
No, not really. As like just with my family life and the way that I'm living right now, like it's all about my kids, like they're 10, 8 and 6. And so it's just a totally different, it's so much less about me now, and everything I do is more about them and their lifestyle and what they want to do. And I want my kids to be hunters. Like you want Noah to be a hunter, but I also have to make sure that I leave room for them to pursue what they want, and so I have to be careful that I don't push my things on them, because my kids are pretty strong-willed and they want to do their thing, and real quickly they'll be like, and then I don't want to push them off of it if they don't want to do it. And so I just want to make room for them to whatever it is, and right now it's just playing on the street, playing street hockey or playing in the bush. My daughter's crazy about like building forts and things like that. And she likes to come with me probably the most, like hunting. And my boys are young, you know, and so they like to play Lego or whatever they like to do, you know, so, but she likes that show Alone.
Oh, we
Like,
just got into
just
it.
Crazy about Alone.
Yeah.
She's watched all 10 seasons.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so she loved building forts and doing that kind of a thing. And so we're always talking about that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's her thing a little bit, you know? So
Bushcraft.
kind of, yeah. Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah.
So she always, when we go camping, she makes the fire and stuff like that. So
That's great.
yeah, we do a lot of camping. So yeah, we did it. I think actually, okay. So trips, not hunting trips. We want to do a couple canoe trips as a family, and we did an overnighter this spring, and that's kind of where we're kind of going right now because they like that. So we're probably going to do next year, and then the because they're in our area, and so probably be shifting more to the kind of more of that kind of style. Just being in the outdoors in that way.
Well, that's a good introduction to
Oh, it's awesome.
Like
yeah.
that's a gateway, right?
Yeah. And
Really.
it teaches them to suffer a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, because the bugs suck. And everything about canoe tripping is hard. You know, like portaging is hard. We say portaging up north. We don't say portaging.
Yeah.
We say portaging. And portaging is hard and paddling is hard and the bugs are hard. And when it rains, it's hard. And we got to a campsite that we thought was going to be our campsite. And we got all our stuff out and literally we are absolutely covered in hundreds of thousands of ants. And so we just couldn't stand it. And so everything back in the canoes, got to go find a new spot. And that was hard because we were tired, you know? And so it just teaches them to suffer a little bit.
And push on.
Yeah. And be in the bush and then learning to relax a little bit and just be calm and okay, we can do this. Just let's do this. We'll be all right. You know, and I'm not great in an emergency situation. So it teaches me those things too.
Yeah.
You know, so
Very valuable lessons.
yeah, it's awesome. It's fun. So yeah, that's probably where we're going next with, if any trips are planned. I want to someday do a really good fly-in moose hunt. I'm such a Manitoba boy that like, that's all I want to do. Like, and I think also I'm not going to spend the big bucks. I'm not going to go to like the Yukon or anything, which that would be cool. That'd be amazing. You know, there's a guy in Cranberry Portage who's got a garage full of moose heads and he's got a 72-inch bull from the Yukon and he's an old guy. He's in his 80s and he's a fun guy to just go chat with.
So you're saying I'm taking a trip up
That's,
there?
you know, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah. And he's just got stories about moose hunting, but he's moose hunted everywhere and he's got big bulls from Cranberry, Flin Flon area too. But his biggest bull comes from the Yukon and that'd be amazing. But I say never. I just probably never going to spend the cash to go do that, you know?
I'm with you on that. I had a list when I was younger.
Yeah.
Of all the animals I wanted to hunt. Africa, everything.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I picked the wrong career, first of all.
Yeah. You're a firefighter, right?
No.
Sorry.
I'm in corrections there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shift work,
Yeah.
you know, it affords me a lot of time off and all that, which is good. But hey, I'm not making the big bucks like all these businessmen that can do all these hunts. So it's like, okay, Manitoba, it's good. We can hunt moose, elk, whitetails, bear. And they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
Good hunting. Like the elk, maybe whatever. And we talked about the moose is suffering a bit, but there are still some areas with the fly in that.
Yeah.
It's still good.
Yeah. It's amazing though, when you talk to the pilots and you're like, you think you could just point to any lake on the map and they'll be like, no, there's a hunter there. What about that one? Yep. There's a hunter there. What about that one? And it's full up there too.
Oh, it is full.
Yep.
It was so frustrating.
Yep.
Got to the point where I'm like, okay, where can I go? And even got to the point when Ryan and I did our first fly-in together. We go up there. We had a lake that we wanted to go to. And the pilot's like, somebody walked into the plane base there. They're like, was all angry and upset, whatever. He walked out. Pilot comes to talk to us. Okay, so yeah, you guys can't go to that lake.
Come on.
What do you mean? I've, map scouted this. We know where we want our camp because the Google Earth images were good for that spot, luckily. And it was like a small enough lake where it was safe. 2 guys going in there with bows.
Yeah.
It was, no, it's too close. You see, there's too many people here. Well, the office said it was okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going into another area that we don't know about. We were told that we could get into these other lakes, but all those creeks were totally dried up. There's no way. And it's just like, well, this sucks. We've ended up finding a decent spot for the last few years, but it's tough. It's crowded.
Yeah, it's really tough. Yeah.
It's crowded. It's not as easy. The animals aren't everywhere either. Like you said, you have to wait days to see something.
And we need hunters, and that's really important, but then it's frustrating too. It's the funny paradox we have.
Yeah, exactly. So this has been pretty awesome, man.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, okay.
So why did you pick focusing on stories rather than issues or techniques or tactics or anything like that? We talked about that a little bit off air, but like just why'd you pick this platform or this venue, or why'd you do this?
Okay. So I told you this story, I think, but I'll say it again for everyone else. There's a ton of podcasts now on techniques and tactics, which actually help me greatly.
Or issues.
Yeah. That's, if you want to talk about issues, you go to Meat Eater,
Sure. Yeah.
Clay Newcomb too, as well. And I'm not going to compete with those guys.
Right.
They have a ton of, obviously they're the biggest guys in the industry right now. So I saw that and I'm just like, you know what? The stories is kind of where I want to go. That's what hooked me into hunting, reading magazines and books.
Nice.
The imagination of it all. My first bear hunt was out in BC. That's where I grew up for some of my time there. My folks are still out there. My brother, they're actually leaving really good moose hunting to come out here to moose hunt with me in Manitoba.
Yeah.
So whatever, I talked them into that one. We went on a spring bear hunt with my dad up just in the interior of BC. And on the map, it said, beware of grizzlies.
It's like a different world.
I was like, this is awesome.
I
was totally in.
Yeah.
And I was like into snowboarding, skateboarding, playing hockey, trying to do somewhat good at school, maybe slacking on that mostly, but it was just, I wasn't into that. That wasn't my world. They moose hunted and I would call them rednecks, hillbillies, all this. And then they kind of said, yeah, come out bear hunting with us. And I almost didn't go. I got in an argument with my dad. I didn't want to go. Went up there. Beware of grizzlies. We saw one bear the whole trip. It was a color-faced cinnamon. Ran across the logging road, and you can actually shoot them on the road there.
Okay.
My dad was fumbling for the bullets, as long as you don't shoot it out of the truck.
Right.
He said he didn't really want to actually shoot it.
Sure.
So, but just the excitement of that. We got lost sort of in the woods as well because we weren't seeing anything. We didn't know anything about thermals.
Right.
We had no idea.
Sure.
We're just all three dudes walking on a logging road.
Yeah.
Oh, there's bear crap. And I tell my brother Johnny, it's like, touch it, see how old it is. That's how it was pretty funny. But we got lost in the bush too there. I had to find our way out with a compass. That kind of adventure, that excitement really got me into it. So to start the podcast, now to come full circle with that, I saw a story on Facebook of this guy in Alaska who shot a nice brown bear. And he went to go do a follow-up shot. I don't think he needed to, but it went over a rise or a crest of a hill. And he fell down, broke his femur, had to stay out there the whole night.
That's crazy.
Trying to get him on the podcast. But, and then that story, I was just like so enamored with that story. And I was like, that just brought me back to everything. It's kind of given me kind of chills a bit, goosebumps thinking about it because that's something that's missing out there.
Well, I think story is such a powerful tool because it gives you the latitude to talk about all those other things. You can talk about issues. You can talk about what we kind of have today. Techniques. You can talk about tactics. You can talk about ethics. Through story. And stories like people don't get their backs up. If you just say, "Here, well, I'll just tell you my story." Yeah. And then you're not on a platform. You're not on a soapbox. You're not preaching to them. Well, this is the way it needs to be. I'll tell you my story, or I'll tell you a story one time. And people listen. And the stories are, and as hunters, we can be kind of a bit like egotistical. Sure. Oh, we're the man. I've had those pride issues. I think maybe we've all had in some point. You get a little bit of experience. I know I don't need to listen. It's like, you know what? Just calm down. Listen to the story because it's interesting. We like sharing stories. Yeah. If you want to tell your story, you should probably listen to somebody else's story. Sure. Sit down, listen. You're going to learn a thing or two. Yeah. And fishing, man, do I pick up a lot of things that I learn just from listening to the guys talk about their story. And you're like, oh, you're fishing that deep. Oh, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you learn. They let something slip, but it's like... Because, we like to share. Yeah. So that's cool. I really think it's neat. And so, I'm glad I got to be a part of it. And I was going to ask you, kind of why me? But I think we covered that a little bit. Well, why'd you ask me? I'm thinking about guys and why I wanted to do it too is just give people who aren't well known in the industry a chance. We've all I know for me, I kind of grew up on publications. Like I said, Dwight Schrute, Larry D. Jones, Kurt Wells, all these guys that kind of helped mentor me into hunting because I had no mentor. My dad a little bit, but he just started hunting at age 40. Yeah. So he had no idea. Sure. He was just figuring it out.
He was just figuring it out,
Mhm.
and not very well.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're listening to
Yeah,
this, but
yeah.
but it's true. He knows it. He shot a few moose, but that's all good. So yeah,
cool.
just giving people an opportunity, because I wanted to be in the outdoor industry, and it's like, oh, if I want to be in the outdoor industry, I got to make it happen myself. So, and then it gives me a chance to talk to guys like you. You
Yeah.
have a story.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story,
Yeah.
and reading your story through text message, it's like, yeah, that's a great story. The only thing that could make it better is maybe if you rode your bike from McGregor to
Right. Yeah.
to Heights, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of
Oh, no, I appreciate it. This has been fun.
One last question.
Yeah. I like it.
Do you own a gun?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have a gun now?
Oh,
You have
yeah.
your own gun?
Yeah.
I know. I'm just kind of bugging.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I like all the stories of the borrowing the gun. So what caliber are you shooting?
So when I bought and I don't have very many guns, like I'm not a gun guy necessarily, but when I was 18 and I was going to go guiding, I was like, I should probably have a gun in camp. And I got a couple crazy stories about bear charges. I've had 2 bear charges, and I'm glad the one time I had a gun, the one time I didn't. And the one time I had a gun, I was really glad I did. And it was a bear in camp. And I was like, I probably should have a gun in camp. And so I wanted to buy a gun anyway. And so I went and bought one, and it's a 300 Win Mag. And I guess my idea was I just want to have one gun that can do a bunch of things. And so that's what I bought. It could have been a 30-06 or whatever, but that's what I bought when I bought it, you know? So, and then since then I had a 270 that I should have never sold. And I think that's usually the story with most guys with guns that sell a gun. You always hear that. I had this gun, should have never sold it, right?
Oh, I got one of those.
It was a beautiful Winchester model pre-64 270, shot really nice. And I was getting married, so I wanted some cash.
Mhm.
Sold it for like cheap, like stupid, like $400 or something, you know, like whatever. So where's that $400 now? I don't know, you know? And then I've got a 243, and then I've got a muzzle loader, and I've got a shotgun and a 22. So the gun cabinet has what I need it to have in there. And then I've got a bow.
Yeah.
And I'm still rocking a 2006 Bowtech Tribute, and it
Nice.
shoots really good. I broke a limb, and so I put Barnsdale limbs on it, and it still shoots good. And I like it, and I know it, and that's
Yeah.
what
Why
I'm shooting right
change?
now. Yeah, I keep looking at the new bows, but I spend a lot on fishing, so it's hard to just keep justifying
It is.
costs on all the different things. And
I think I found my bow that I'm going to have for a while.
yeah, that PSE looks nice.
Yeah, the PSE Expedite. For me, it shoots really good, and it's it's like, okay, I want to actually have a bow for like the next 10 years,
Right.
the same bow.
Right.
I don't want to
Just get used to it, know it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I guess we'll have to have you back and hear about those
Yeah.
bear charging stories and
Yeah.
new stuff. There's so much to talk about.
Oh yeah,
obviously.
you could go forever.
Like, you've only scratched the surface of the stories,
Sure.
you know, like
Yeah.
really with the moose hunts, there's an episode just talking about moose hunting
Yeah.
and all that and whatever. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't think I was like, wow, I don't know how many stories I've got. But then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, yeah, I got stories.
Oh, you've been doing this
Yeah.
for over 20 years.
Yeah.
You got stories.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks
I
a lot,
appreciate it,
Brett.
man.
And we'll see you guys on the next one.